So with number 20 getting the list kicked off with owner mode, it is something they already have in most Madden franchise games. While the mode is very bland and never gets updates nowadays, I do like that people that want to be more than just a head coach, player, and general manager, they're able to take over more aspects of the team, like ticket sales, parking sales, and even food prices. And this in MLB The Show would be revolutionary with money flow, especially with there being no salary cap. Coming into MLB 21, if they could add it, because as you guys know, they already have a couple of things, like sponsors regarding who sponsors your team, budgeting, that includes concessions, ticket prices, parking garages, and whatever you may be. And back in the day in Madden, you used to be able to create a stadium, and I believe that's coming into MLB The Show as well this year. And here at number 19, piggybacking off of number 20, I wish there was a better opportunity to have a multitude of sponsors for who you want to be the brands of your team. In MLB 20, it's pretty basic, but I believe in MLB 21 they can make it to where you could have multiple dealerships with big brands and have them for more opportunities. They're pretty simple when it comes to MLB 20 regarding scoring 5 runs in a game or winning a series. I believe they could make that even more in-depth, and that could make it even greater, especially if you're using low-budget teams like the Brewers, A's, and Rays. And if they add point 20 along with this, that would be a huge breakthrough system in customization, whether you're the owner or not, because you'd be able to have a lot more money flowing in. Now at number 18, I have another small one. I think they need to tweak the morale system. If you guys go into your franchise and you go into your lineups or your rotation or whatever menu you want to look at, you can go to a certain player and scroll to their morale. While yes, it is a good thing added to the mode, I believe there could be a couple minor changes. One of the major flaws you'll see is a player that's like 77 or 78 overall will end up having a hot start to the season and will suddenly change their opinion on themselves to be an MVP caliber player. Well, yes, that is cool and all. When they come back down to earth later in the season, their morale and overall gets absolutely crushed. Or another example is they'll be mad at the amount of money they're getting on their contract or that they're benched when they're hurt, which at the end of the day, you can't really control those two things, and we'll get more on those specific details later. At number 17, I believe they should change their GM contract lengths. San Diego Studios has it set in stone at 3-year contracts, and that is it. You can't change it. What if somebody wanted to do a 30-year franchise where they take one team every year and win a title and move on to the next? Well, you can't do that, unfortunately, with their current situation. If you decide to play with contracts on, you can only have them at 3 years, and that is that. Let's go to number 16. At number 16, I believe there should be more GM goals or stories that you can put on at your choice if somebody wants to play a game similar to how NBA My GM used to be a couple of years ago. Well, if you go look at your current GM goals in your MLB franchise, you'll see that they're very bland, very straightforward, and nothing you can really do to change them. And I also believe it's the same for all 30 teams. That shouldn't be the case whatsoever. You should be able to change them based on the state of your franchise, if you're contending, if you're rebuilding, or if you're just in the middle of the pack. And also, you should be able to make it based on how you want your franchise to be. Number 15, I want to see more specific team celebrations. Now, they did a good job adding a couple into MLB 20, the show. The Soto Shuffle is a good example of that, but I believe they could keep adding more onto them going into this year's game. Like Vin Scully announcing it's time for Dodger baseball, the Mets with their LFGM chant, Go Cubs Go after a Cubs home victory, or even what the Braves did last postseason with their Mix It Up promo. I think these would be great additions and would make the franchise feel even more in depth. At number 14, here's one I think they could do a lot with, and that's to make the trade deadline more important. When you get to the trade deadline in most sports games, including MLB The Show, you come up to it and it says, this is the trade deadline day. Would you like to stop simming and make any trades? Well, if you click no, that's it. And that's nowhere near how the MLB trade deadline functions. In my opinion, I believe it's the craziest deadline of all the major sports in the U.S., not including soccer. And I believe they should add at least a couple cutscenes, maybe some crazy offers sprinkled in via the computer or to you, and there's so much more they could do with it. I want to hear you guys in the comments down below give your input on this. What could they do to make the trade deadline better? Let's see what you guys come up with. Here at number 13, I believe they should allow extra minor league options. While this isn't realistic by any means, let me explain. MLB The Show, you get 3 minor league options with your MILB players and prospects. So if you bring them up and decide to send them back down to their original level, you lose an option on them. And when you run out, they have to pass through waivers, and you risk the chance of losing them to another team. And there should be an option or setting to be able to change this for the guys that like to keep their squad fresh. Instead of having to trade all the time and keep fluctuating your roster, you should be able to keep adding players back and forth between the minors and majors with unlimited minor league options if you want that choice. Is this realistic? Once again, no, but for the people that like to keep their squad fresh, they should add it for them. Let's move on to number 12. At number 12, we have the choice to keep customizing your league. And this one might not be as realistic either, but I'll once again explain. When you start up an MLB franchise, you'll see a starting screen being able to decipher what you want to do and what you want the CPU to manage. And once you click through those couple screens, you can't change them. And along those lines, you're being able to have the ability to have a universal DH and whatever it may be. Well, what if you want to change that a couple months down the line? You can't. They should be able to add that menu back to your screen at any moment, to where if you want to play 6-inning games, or 7-inning games, or even have a 30-man roster, or even have universal DH on for the month of September, you should have the ability to do so. At number 11, I believe they should have the ability for players to progress or regress a lot more during the season. Regression is a thing we see with a lot of players at a certain age, especially in MLB The Show that gets hit with a bug. But I believe they should have the same thing with progression. Let's say there's people that don't want to play multiple years in a franchise, but yet at the same time they don't want to clear the farm system. So let's say you have a couple of prospects in your system that won't be ready for 2 to 4 years down the line, and you don't plan on playing the franchise till that moment. Well, you should be able to have a slider that's going to be able to adjust the amount your players regress and progress throughout the season and throughout your franchise. Similar to how 2K does their boom and bust scouting system, I think this would be a great addition and will make players want to make their franchise even longer lasted. At number 10, I believe you should have the ability to be able to keep track of minor league baseball stats, the MLB, and awards. If you guys go into your awards, or if you go look at a prospect or somebody that you called up during the year, their minor league stats aren't there, and the same goes if you're multiple years into a franchise and you want to go see if you won an MVP 3 years back, you can't. It only goes back a certain point. And for minor leagues, you don't see anything. So this is something very important that they should be able to fix. I want to be able to track my ERA of my number 1 pitching prospect, or see how well my rehab player is hitting down in AA, so I know what the course of his recovery is. Why don't they add this? It's a very simple question. At number 9, I believe you should have the opportunity to have more contract extension opportunities. You have it twice in a standard franchise mode, and if you decided to start in the regular season, you only had 1. Well, you should definitely have the ability to lock up players whenever you want to, maybe once or twice a month on maybe the 15th and the 30th of each month of play. Because this goes back to your morale system I spoke on earlier. If a player is on a rookie deal and expects $6, $7, $8 million a year, you can't give them that because you only have certain opportunities throughout the year to give them the money they need. And it just hurts your player at the end of the day because you don't have control of how their morale and overall is. It just hurts your team's play. So therefore, I believe you should have more opportunities throughout the season to extend players' contracts. At number 8, getting into an off-season one, I believe they should make arbitration in the 40-man roster management a lot less hard to control. For the players that just like to do simulation-based rebuilds where they don't play a single moment of their games, this is a bug for them because they're not able to control their roster and the CPU is always taking their players. Or if you're a casual player or a new baseball fan, this can be overwhelming because you don't really know what they're doing. I believe they should add a little bit more help to the menu or even a mini tutorial to go along with it so you know what you're doing and you know how to plan your roster and plot it to the way you want it. Let's get into the top 7. Starting the top 7 with number 7. They should add momentum in rivalry game series. To start with momentum, let's say you're the 2nd or 3rd place team just a couple games back of first late in the year, and you go to play that 1st place team in your home ballpark. Well, there should be a little bit more intensity with that game. The game should be either harder to play, the crowd should be more interacted, and it should feel a lot more like a game that's a must-win. And very similar to how they have the showdown games in Diamond Dynasty or in Road to the Show, you have your real-time attributes, they should have something a lot closer to those lines in those series. And I think it'd be absolutely game-breaking. And to go off that with rivalries, you see a lot of interdivisional or interleague rivalries that don't get to happen very often. For example, the Giants and A's or the Dodgers and Angels. those teams don't play each other very often because of how the MLB is set up. So when you play them in your franchise, the game should feel a lot more impactful and a lot more intense. The crowd should also be more into it. There should be a little bit more feud going on with the players, and it would feel like you're in a very intense game that has a lot more than just bragging rights. Number 6, another 2K-like option. In the offseason, they added a lot more last year where you could customize and rebrand your team. Well, I believe they should keep adding to that. Let's say you want to realign the league. Let's say you want to change league settings. Well, this should be a perfect time to that. Let's say you want to play in the NL West and you're the New York Mets. That's your opportunity. Let's say you want to change stadiums. Well, this is an opportunity for that. I believe they should add a little bit more offseason customization to really make the league feel like it's your own version of the MLB, and this is a perfect time for your creativity to come flowing out of you. With the offseason feeling more than just free agency and controlling your current roster. Let's get into the top 5. Starting the top 5 with an easier scouting and budget interface. I've played MLB The Show and specifically MLB Franchise Mode for years, and these two modes and specific screens still confuse the hell out of me. For scouting, I truly believe that it needs a whole overhaul on the interface to make it where it's a lot easier to take in. And the budget screen is completely out of whack too. When you click on the screen, it shows your weekly values, but when you go into the whole menu, it shows your yearly values, and your contracts are all jumbled up between your minor league and major league players. They should have it in one easy unit so you can really see how much money you're making and if you're able to make that star trade that you really want to around the deadline, instead of you having to get all types of calculators out and doing math you've never even freaking heard of before for a freaking video game. At number 4, they should adjust player regression. I hinted on this earlier in the video on the progression one. Thankfully, with regression in the game, it's a lot more concise, but it's almost too concise where it seems like the same exact stuff will happen in every single save. If you're a team with example of somebody like Nelson Cruz, aka the fine line of baseball, he might be hitting 30 home runs with an average of 295. You shouldn't go look at his stat board and see that he has negative 10s across every single one. I get that he is aging, but he shouldn't be regressing faster than the rate of the speed of light. Same goes for even younger players if you've been in the same franchise for a while. For example, Ronald Acuna Jr., who just turned 22. If you go into a franchise 10 years in and he's the age of 32, his overall comes crashing down. I get that he's had 10 years of service time, but the man is 32 years old. I do need to realize that San Diego Studio needs to patch up these issues quite a bit. At number 3, we have another off-season one, which I believe would be the coolest of them all if they were to add this. And that is free agent counteroffers. And it wouldn't only have to be in the off-season, it could be in-season contracts as well. So this means all the top free agent players in the class wouldn't fly off the board and be signed within the first week. It would also make it to where you'd have to be a lot more competitive with signing players or even retaining your own. And finally, it would take away the courage and urge of you wanting to be cheesy and signing that 95 overall player that's still left out there for 1 year, $5 million. Because let's be honest, that wouldn't happen. At number 2, I would like them to add better CPU management logic. For example, something that's not completely out of the window in franchise mode is you'll see a team sign Freddie Freeman, Luke Voit, Pete Alonso, and Paul Goldschmidt on one roster. Along with it being absolutely stupid, it makes rosters a lot more jumbled. If SDS has the chance to patch it, it would make free agency and team building a lot more competitive and make the league feel a lot more realistic just by this one touch. And now let's get into my number 1 wish and hopeful to add to MLB The Show 21. And getting started with number 1 on my MLB 21 franchise wish list, that is less CPU team interference. Now, if you're a simulation rebuilder, you know how much of a pain in the rear end this issue is. Now, I've had many occurrences and also seen on Rebuild YouTube videos where players are put on waivers without you wanting them to, or a prospect you feel like isn't developed yet and should stay in the minors to grow a little bit longer is called up without you even realizing. Or you'll spend 20 to 30 minutes just aligning your lineups and starting rotation just for it to be jumbled back up within 5 or 6 games of simulation. If they could really tune this up, it would make simulating through seasons or even just playing through them a lot quicker, and the possibility of you wanting to go deeper into your franchise for years are a lot more likely. So this issue really needs to be solved. Alright guys, that is the list. Thank you for making to this point of the video if you have. So make sure to smash that like button, comment down below to see what you think I've missed, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. We are on the road to 1.5K. And I want to apologize if my voice seemed choppy and all over the place. I'm getting used to these voiceover videos and I hope to improve them over time. So please let me know if you guys have any recommendations on how I can improve these videos or if you have anything I missed in the list. So without further ado, peace out, go A-Town, Blake out. Oh, and I forgot, World Series or bust for the Braves. Yes, sir.